Hey class, so in this video I'm going to talk to you about how do you properly use your scientific calculator to do scientific notation. So in many cases you can borrow a calculator in class or you can use your own, right? As long as it has the proper buttons and functionality. So in the first semester you did scientific notation but you couldn't use your calculator on the quiz. And many of you mastered that quiz, so you understand that in scientific notation that when you have a positive exponent you move the decimal place to the right, and when you have a negative exponent, it means you move the decimal point to the left. So this semester, you have to know how to do that in your calculator, and the calculator does all the work for you. You just have to hit the right buttons. So let's take a simple example. In multiplication, it doesn't matter, right? So when you do 2 times 3 times 4 times 5, it doesn't matter. You can mix up the order. So you could do 4 times 5 times 2 times 3, and you'd get the same answer as if you did 2 times 3 times 4 times 5. And obviously that answer is 120. So we're going to write 120 right here. But when you do division, you have to do it in the correct order. So let me type it in. 2 times 3 divided by 4 times 5. Now that's actually the wrong answer. Now, because I didn't use parentheses. So this is what, if you type it in directly like that, this is actually what comes out of your, that's actually what the calculator thinks you're doing. 2 times 3 divided by 4 times 5. It actually is moving this times 5 to the top of the fraction if you don't use parentheses. So we could type parentheses in, right? We could put those in, but those are extra button presses that can lead to mistakes, right? The more button presses you have, the greater chance that you'll get the answer wrong, because every time you press a button on your calculator, you can make a mistake, right? So we want to minimize button presses. So let's go back and do this problem again. But we're going to use our parentheses instead. So we do 2 times 3 divided by, and then you use the open parentheses and do 4 times 5 in there, right? And there you go, equals, and you get 0.3 is the answer. You can see obviously the answer changed quite a bit just based on using parentheses, like shown over here on the left, where the 4 times 5 is done first, right? So you could also do it another way. You could type in 2 times 3 divided by 4 divided by 5, because basically both numbers here at the bottom are being divided. So we do 2 times 3 divided by 4 divided by 5, and you get 0.3 as well. So I'm going to write that down here, where 2 times 3 divided by 4 divided by 5 is the same thing as putting the parentheses at the bottom of the fraction. If you don't put the parentheses, this is what happens. And you don't want to have to move that stuff. And because scientific notation has the times 10 in there, you want to make sure you avoid that mistake. So you can use parentheses, but there's a better way to do this. I'm going to show you in 2 examples. So here is the first question to practice. 6.15 times 10 to the negative 3 divided by 2.07 times 10 to the negative 10. If you know how to do this, you can try it out and you can pause the video. Otherwise, you can keep playing to see how to divide this properly. Turn it on here and type in 6.15 and hit this EXP button on the bottom of the calculator. That means times 10. And then type the negative button, which is on the left side here. Negative 3 divided by 2.07 EXP negative. Again, don't use the minus button, 10. And then you'll see this number, and we're going to turn this number into scientific notation. So you hit this mode button at the top of the calculator. You hit it 3 times, and you'll see psi in the middle here, option number 2. And it's going to ask you how many digits, and I just press 9 for the maximum number of digits. That can show you. You can see the answer is 2.97 times 10 to the negative 7. So if you do it wrong, right, if you use the other method, right, 6.15 times 10 with a caret, I missed the 1 there, times 10 with a caret, negative 3. and then you divide that by 2.07 times 10 with a caret negative 10, and you see, notice how I didn't use parentheses, right? It's going to move this 10 to the negative 10 to the top of the fraction, and it's going to give you a totally different answer. Notice the answer is 2.97 times 10 to the negative 13. So you're actually many, many zeros off. We're about 20 zeros, 20 factors of 10 off of the correct answer. So that's why you don't use this method. See, with the times and the 10 and the caret, right? Extra button presses lead to mistakes. And so you want to make sure you get that right. So the answer is 2.97 times 10 to the positive 7. So now that you've tried one question and seen the answer, go ahead and try this question. 3.25 times 10 to the negative 6 divided by 6.03 times 10 to the negative 2. Pause the video and then try it out and then see if you got the right answer. So I'm typing 3.25 exp for the times 10e there. Negative button 6. Remember, don't use minus. Divided by 6.03 exp negative 2. And hit the equals button. You can see here the answer is 5.38 times 10 to the negative 5. It's just back to standard mode by hitting mode 3 times, pressing 3 for norm, and then pressing 2. I explain to you what number 1 means if you want later. Then you can switch it back to scientific notation by hitting mode 3 times, pressing psi, and then 9 for the maximum number of digits on the screen. So the answer to the second question is 5.39 times 10 to the negative 5 power. Okay, so now that you've done those two examples and you've gotten the correct answers, you want to make sure that you know that you have these skills. They are three things. How to use the EE or EXP button on your calculator to replace the 4 button presses. There's no times and 1 and 0 and caret anymore. It's just EE button or EXP button, right? You want to avoid parentheses in when you're dividing scientific notation because it's just extra button presses. But if you don't put the parentheses, right, and you don't use the EE button, you're going to lead to the mistakes that we talked about. And then how to make a calculator convert between standard and scientific notation. And that's the first quiz of the second semester. If you have any questions, please write them down and you'll get to take the quiz in class. Thanks. Bye.